first question from the back.
That is, in the last general election recently, I noticed that what we are saying is if we can come together and put a lot of pressure to gain local support so that we can, opposition wherever, the right yet can change the current regime, don't you think that's going to be a bit difficult, given the fact that the whole weight of the administrative and judiciary machinery is fully backed by UMNO one way or the other? We have seen very clear scenarios where when the votes were counted, I remember clearly seeing that the results were very favorable towards Pakatan. All of a sudden, there was a blackout. We are also quite aware that there were plane loads of AirAsia flights coming in and people wearing the One Malaysia t-shirts. We also know very openly that if you walk into a Barisan Marquee at that time, 500 ringgit, no problem. What I'm trying to say is, with all this going on, don't you think, or what's your opinion regarding the massive corruption, the vote buying, and the administrative machinery backing UMNO all the way? What chance has the Rakyat got, let's see, would be given a fair go? And how are we going to influence the machinery not to side on UMNO?
Excellent question. If you take on board the civil service, military, the police, they would account for about 1.5 million voters. On the face of it, a ready-made vote bank. I'll tell you this, the police started to swing in Johor. Military rank and file, unlike police officers, can't stop you while you're driving and say your taillights are broken, but slip me a fiver and move on. Military can't. So they can't augment their income. All three categories, civil servants, the lowest ranking, go to work today and bring food packs because they're feeling the pinch on the increased cost of living. And they're beginning to ask questions. Now, it's vital, therefore, that they be given the key information to understand why their situation is what it is. We had an initiative to take the message to the military and the police. Again, I would say too little, too late. We had efforts to get into the civil service. Too little, too late. You talked about the cheating. I can share with you that I was part of an Abu covert operation at the KLIA several nights before polling day. These were unscheduled chartered flights. Malindo, all right? They had several flights that came in empty, but Malindo flew in Nepali workers from Sabah. Now we intercepted them and we quizzed them, and they said they were working in oil palm plantations. They were told to board this plane and they didn't know where they were going. Now, does that sound like the movement of a foreign workforce? They were picked up by RISDA vans. These are government agency vans. We tailed them, and it was a cat and mouse game. They would stop and hope we would drive on. We stopped. They turned into a lay-by. There were 2 tour buses waiting. We assumed to transfer them over. After half an hour, the tour buses left. We tailed again. We were in one car, 2 vans, clever, they split. So you got to make a choice, all right? So in our minds, we were very clear. It was very clear in our minds that we were going to be cheated. You talk about 500 ringgit, in Sabah and Sarawak it's 50. It's 50 ringgit that buys a vote, but you have to understand the circumstance, especially in the Sarawak longhouses. I was in Batang Ai, in Sarawak in 2009 for the by-election, and I stayed at a longhouse, a family of 6. At that time, would have a household income of about 250. But they were able to augment by going into the forest at the back to, you collect your ulam, your batai, so on and so forth, to augment. But guess what? The forests are gone. It's all in Taib Mahmud's Swiss accounts. And so it's down to 150 a month. Now if you're earning 150 a month household income and BN offers you 50, that's the same of 10 days food on the table. And you and I will sit here and say, but why? It's so easy to pontificate when you're here. You're not in their circumstance. 50 ringgit puts food on the table for 10 days. Okay, so the blackouts, oh yes. Credit to the voters in Nurul Izzah's constituency. The polling center in Bangkok, there was an attempt to drive in 2 ballot boxes. They stood their ground. They stood their ground and they refused to allow it entry. And they've probably saved her MPship. But for that success story, you need to look at Wong Tak in Bentong. You need to look at Tapa. And I've seen the footage in Tapa where the FRU, the Reserve Unit Police, came in and literally threw out the opposition candidate and his observers. All right? Now that Tapa was critical because they needed the 2 state seats in Perak to take the state government. Okay, so yes, how do we deal with this? And should we allow ourselves any hope in the light of what's happened? Insofar as the civil servants, the military, the police, my view is efforts must continue. Must continue to get them to understand. In every rally I've spoken, I know the special branch are there, and I've said, take this back to your colleagues. We are fighting for your kids as well. And we've got to hope that they too understand that message because they are feeling the pinch. We keep taking this message out to them that if you see 500,000 on the streets, and I hope that one day we'll achieve it, and you get the order to shoot, understand we are also fighting for you. And I think that's the message that we need to keep taking out to them. We need to get them to continue to understand that they are feeling the pinch because the politicians are taking everything. We need to get that message to them. 1.5 million, that's a strong vote bank. We need to break it. We need to break it. The massive corruption, we've had some success in the kampongs, in the villages in West Malaysia, to convince them, take the money but don't sell your vote. Why sell your vote? But in Sarawak, what happens is this. The village headmen called the Tuai Rumah, just before elections, they are all picked up, taken to Kuching, the capital city, put in hotels, wine, woman, song. And before they go back, they are each given 5,000 ringgit, 3,000 for himself and 2,000 to be defrayed to the longhouse occupants. Now he probably pockets the whole. Goes back, gets a wild boar or a jungle fowl, slaughters it and tells them, I have committed this longhouse to UMNO BN at the next election. Anyone who votes contrary to that dishonors me, and I invoke the spirits of the forest. Your family is cursed for 7 generations. It works. Now the only ones who can break that are the children coming back from the universities. Because if I went there, don't waste it. But the children can tell the parents, look, if you're so concerned about the curse, I'm telling you now, I'm voting opposition, so we're cursed anyway. The kids can do it. We can't. We need to go out and we need to wake them up to this. The money that they give you is yours anyway. So take it, but don't sell your vote. In Semenanjung, it has had a measure of success. We've just got to continue. If you are going to place your hopes on a GE14 and not taking Putrajaya on the streets, there's no shortcut. We need to level the playing field because UMNO BN is not going to give us any of the reforms. So yes, you've highlighted two very core concerns. No shortcut, a lot of work to be done. It's a media battle that we need to take out.
Next question.
Another question? Ask a question. Okay, I ask. Harris, can I just ask, early on you said that Malaysians are pacifists. That, in my opinion, is a very strong statement because many hundreds of thousands came out in the Bersih rally. Suddenly, people are becoming more aware and they're craving for change. You also mentioned that perhaps with the economy, they may force a change. It's very interesting to hear you say that it's the economy that may face the change. And I think it's happening in other countries as well. When people go hungry, they will talk louder.
Yes.
Can I say that that's a statement of fact? And will it happen in Malaysia in G14?
I don't know how many of you were at the Bersih rallies. I was at all three. The first one we had, I think, about 60,000, predominantly made up of people who were mobilized by PAS. The second one, we had about 150,000. And I think the third one, anything between 250 to 300,000. Now, I think one of the reasons the numbers kept growing were people were angry with the brutality. But the point I want to make is this. You had grandfathers taking grandchildren out like it was a muddy ground, or a picnic, a walk in the park. It was anything but. But that was the impression that so many had as they came out. So whilst we can take comfort in the growing numbers, if, for instance, we announced that Bersih 4.0, which is being talked about now, would not be a 3-4 hour rally, but would be a sit-in at Putrajaya until you see a regime change, I wonder how many we will get there. And I say this not to criticize, but the reality is many Malaysians are still afraid when they hear talk about the possibility of violence. Now, if I'm wrong, then I will be very happy when I'm proven to be wrong. But it is in that context that I say that by far and large, Malaysians are pacifists. Having said that, I also said, don't push them too far. Don't push them too far, everyone's got a breaking point. Now, yes, you're right, we've seen this. The economy is failing and people get angry. That's precisely my point. If the economy bottoms out, I've gone down in the dramas, I've tried to explain in the rallies. Bankruptcy is a very ambiguous word, and it's hard to visualize how it's going to impact on your life personally if the national economy is down the toilet bowl. But for the pakcik, for the uncles and the aunties in the kampong, I've got to explain it to them this way. If tomorrow you wake up and because we are unable to meet our foreign debt, we are bankrupt, your savings in the tabung haji, that's the what's the equivalent? The saving fund for those who want to go to Mecca to do the Hajj is wiped out. Now, that's a shock. What? Gone? Yeah, it's gone. All right, now that's going to make people angry if that happens. We're having this problem now in Malaysia. Young girls come from the kampongs to Kuala Lumpur to be trained as nurses. But because they do not have a credible command of the English language, most hospitals prefer the nurses from the Philippines. So you're trained, your family spent a lot of money, and you're here now, and you can't get a job. So they end up in the massage parlors, the brothels, the pubs, and after 1 month of being groped, they send money home, saying they just got their pay back from Tawakal Hospital. And parents buy into this. All right? Now I've had to tell them, if your daughter's a little bit pretty, it's okay, then if the nation's bankrupt, because she can cross the causeway to Singapore and ply her trade there. Or go to Japan, where they have this great fascination with dark-skinned women. Or to Europe, or to the US. You know, and they'll sell themselves to feed you. Wake up. Now, that gets them angry. So yes, if the economy goes down, and if the anger rises enough, then we might see enough on the streets. It's a phenomenon we've seen. Now, that is not necessarily the answer to the problems that the nation is facing, but it is a possibility we cannot discount. And that is my point. That is a possibility we continue to monitor to see if all the factors that we see emerging are pointing to that. I'll be very candid with you. This state-sponsored polarization that we've been observing over the last couple of months. Our concern is this. Are they laying the groundwork? Should the economy bottom out to say the Chinese have taken everything? Say the Chinese have taken everything. Let Utusan take that message into the heartlands, and see a repeat of what happened in Indonesia, the pogroms. Now we're concerned. We're concerned. Rail? Imagine? I don't know, but we're watching.
Yeah, you mentioned that there's this 1.5 million bankers, within the civil service, the army, and the police, and you mentioned. Sorry, the question was that Harris mentioned that there's a 1.5 million people, that we need to take the message through to them in regards to the change. I mean, what I'm trying to link was, you also mentioned, Harris, that if the have-nots get very angry, these people, their safety is under threat. Right? So that message, is that message one of the messages you're taking through to the people, and how do you do it? And how maybe, I don't know, I was thinking how I can help you out on that one.
Okay. I think maybe I put that across rather poorly. If the have-nots, the numbers increase, their anger is towards the haves, the middle class. Right? The middle class. Now the 1.5 million cut across that spectrum. Civil service, the military, the police, cuts across that spectrum. You've got the top brass, top brass, and then you've got the rank and file.
Yeah.
Now the rank and file are the ones who are feeling the pinch. As I said, civil servants going to work now, not able to afford the food stalls out there, they're having to pack the tuck box and the water off to work. So it's to them that we need the rank and file. It's to them that we need to get this message to. This notion of the disenfranchised will come and change your way of life. I say that at every forum where I have a middle class audience. And my contention is I don't care what motivates you to respond, altruistic or to maintain the status of your own lifestyle, whichever. But it's about time you stood up and did something. And again, I will share this since you brought this up. Because I work on the ground, I can tell you that for many of those poor who have come in for the birthday rallies, to them it has been heartening to see middle class stand side by side with them. All right. So yes, we've got to get this clear. The 1.5 million, it cuts across the spectrum. You've got rich, middle class, and the poor. It's the poor that we need to target that message.
The question was the message to the middle class: if they don't do anything, they are going to be under threat.
Oh yeah, but you see now,
Is that,
see this again.
yeah,
I work with limited resources.
right,
Middle class, more often than not, have access to the internet. So it's an easy medium to get the message to them, and it costs you next to nothing. Because of the scarcity of resources, the money, the legwork, we've got to save for the heartlands, for those areas that have a low internet penetration. Middle class, internet.
I have a question. I'm just thinking aloud. I think over the last, maybe since 1970, maybe late 70s, there's been this movement of religious, the Islam movement has become a lot more rigorous, and people are, I guess, you see a lot more people who are now becoming a little bit more religious, the Muslim becoming a little bit more religious than they used to be. Would you see, and the government is actually encouraging it, would you see it as maybe a way for the government to control the masses, the majority of the population by, being religious in a way sometimes this is what God gave to you. God willing, inshallah, God willing, this is what your entitlement is. And therefore you'll be satisfied with your lot in life. Sometimes it is a way to suppress people from, expecting a little bit more, I mean, you have actually seen it in India, I suppose, years ago when, they were the caste system. This is my lot in life, this is a karma, this is what I bring from my previous life, and this is what I deserve. And, if I be good, compliant, obedient, then I'll be able to work it out and then move on. Could it be that? Which is why they're actually encouraging this resurgence of Islamization or whatever you call it.
Can I make a comment? I think it's also partly in our view. I think it's our perception as well. So it's not, when you say religious, is it truly religious or is it extremism you're talking about? So I think it's more our perception on what we see as religious.
Well, I was actually talking about, you see, the thing is I have a lot of friends who over the years, who I was in school with, who were young with me. As we grew older, they became more and more religious due to the fact that there's been a lot of publicity program about how important it is when you are, and in turn, I've actually seen women my age with grandkids, who 1.5-year-old grandkids who are all covered up and all. There's really no reason why. They were at one time beautiful young women themselves who went through life like all of us, but now they're depriving their own grandkids of, and telling them, teaching them to live life, the religious, the good.
I see what you're saying, but what my question is, do you think that's religion, or do you think that's massive brainwashing to say this is what religion is?
Yes, it's probably that. It's probably that. That's why my question is that, are they doing it? Are they encouraging it just so that they have a more compliant population in the end?
Interesting. Every time I hear the Mufti of Perak, Harusani, I'm reminded of this old adage, empty vessels make the most noise. This is a phenomena in Malaysia. The seeming ultra Muslims are actually few in number. But Utusan, Malaysia, and TV3 gives them that huge audience. And because the progressive Muslims choose to keep silent for whatever reason, they appear to be the dominant force. At times it serves UMNO's interests to have the bogeyman of the ultra-Muslim running around, because people then start to think and say, "Ayah, better make sure PAS does not come to power." It works. All right? Everybody says, "Oh my God, if just this handful can do this damage, can you imagine if they were in power?" So sometimes it serves UMNO's interest to have that. Sometimes it serves UMNO's interest to be out there catching courting couples in the Lake Gardens, because they are then seen as the custodians and the guardians of Islam in Malaysia. So which way you look at it, it serves their interest from time to time to have these guys pop up like a jack in the box, make some noise, and then disappear. I mean, have you ever heard any of the ulama pass an edict on corruption in the country? Zero. Zilch. Nothing. It's almost as if Islam is totally disinterested with clean, good governance. I think it is all a lot of stage management, eyewash, to have these little units in place, to put them into play when the need arises. The average Muslim, I had this very interesting experience at this wine bar in the Concord Hotel called Havana. And I was there after a court case, and the waitress came to me, young Malay girl, super short black mini skirt, and says, last order. I said, are you closing? She says, yes. I looked around at all the customers and said, okay. There were about 3 or 4 of them, same short mini skirt, and one gentleman. I said, can I speak to all of you for a while? This is what I said, just come. So they came. 3 girls, 1 guy. I said, is this an Islamic state? Yeah, lah. Yes. All Malays, huh? Short mini skirt, serving me wine. Is this an Islamic? Yes, yes, of course, Islamic state. I said, okay. Is it okay for you to be in that mini skirt? Is it wrong? She asked me. I said, I got no objections. None at all. Is it okay for you to be serving me wine? Again, she asked me, is that wrong? And I said, I'm the one who ordered it. Then I asked them, I said, have you heard about Lina Joy? Yes. What's your view? If she wants to leave Islam, let her go, lah.
Very good.
If she wants to leave Islam, let her go, lah. All right? So, but if they were sitting there and there was an ulama spewing fire, brimstone, got to stone them, cut them into 100 pieces, they wouldn't have dared contradict it. Now that's the reality we have. I can't speak about other jurisdictions, but that's the reality in Malaysia. Now you throw into that Section 12, and this is to me, this was something I was shocked when I saw. Section 12, Sharia Offences Wilayah Persekutuan Act 1997 makes it an offense to hold an opinion contrary to fatwa. Friends, you can't even think contrary to Harusani. All right, that's a frightening proposition. Now, when you see it in that context, the Malay is a third-class citizen in Malaysia. He can't even think for himself. Now, all these little tools, legal tools, put into place. If you miss 3 consecutive Friday prayers, 6 months jail. If you are caught eating during the fasting month, 6 months jail. And when you understand how it works in the religious classes for ages 3 and above, if you're a smart, bright kid who asks smart, bright, intelligent questions, you get clipped on the neck, on the ear to say, don't ask, don't be a smart aleck. All right. Now you take that method of study that is driven and entrenched and take it to tertiary. What you have are yes men. And this is what UMNO has created. And they would like to keep that intact. So Islamization, I don't see that as Islamization. Much of it is cosmetic Arabization. Nothing to do with Islam. And because the populace is not given access to alternative viewpoints in Islam, they are not allowed to understand that it is not monolithic, that it is possible for a different interpretation, a different viewpoint. I just wrote recently about how in 1984, Jakim allowed 2 schools of Shia thought to be practiced in Malaysia. 1984. 12 years later, in 1996, they do an about turn and say, no, you're all banned. So my question is, what happens to one individual holding to your edict, held to this belief, and died before you gave your clarification? Whose sin is it? All right, so that's what you have in Malaysia. When people come and ask me, is it safe to vote for PAS? I say, PAS can never establish the Islamic State. It's a mathematical impossibility. Every seat they take, increase, UMNO loses. You need 148 seats in order to change the constitution and make it Islamic. Why are we worrying about something that cannot happen? PAS by itself cannot form the government of the day. Malays, Muslims are afraid of them. So, it's unlikely that they could get the requisite number of seats to change the constitutional structure.
I don't think my question was
I
so
know.
much that. It was more the fact that I felt that not the Islamization. I think we all know that, in fact, the day-to-day Malay, in fact, the lay Malay, as it were, are not as radical as they make it to be in the first place. But what I'm saying is that, is it possible that the government might actually be trying to get a mass injection of religion into them so that they will be
This government? Religion?
They're trying to, I know they're fake, but they are trying to, they are all holier than thou, sort of trying to, and because the constitution says that to be a Malay, you have to be Muslim, and Muslim and Malay is the same thing. So to be more religious, more Muslim, then you are more Malay. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, as I said, I think there is an attempt to paint themselves and portray themselves as being the custodians of Islam. I mean, you've got as I said, the laws in place. You've got the enforcement officers in place. But what are they enforcing? What are they enforcing?
Control.
Sorry?
Control. They're building control.
Oh, that Black and Decker power tool has always been there. It has always been there. When you tell a Muslim that you cannot have an opinion contrary to fatwa, what more control are we talking about?
Total control.
All right. When you tell him that if you miss 3 consecutive Friday prayers, a matter that is personal between him and God, I'm intervening.
So in time to come, they can actually tell him that vote for UMNO, because UMNO is Muslim, and therefore it's only right they.
What do you mean in time to come? That's what they do now.
No, but in time, you see, the thing is, people are still, some of them are still a little reluctant.
No.
There will come a time when they are so strictly entrenched.
The Malay Muslim in the urban doesn't buy into that anymore. It still sells, and it sells well in the rural. It sells well in the heartland, and it will continue to sell. That is the battle that we need to take. Yes, they present and project themselves as an Islamic state, an Islamic government, all right? With a prime minister whose hands are somehow tainted with the blood of Al-Tatuya. All right? And Islam wants nothing to do with that. A judiciary that has just sprung Ling Leong Sik free. Oh, yeah, he's been acquitted. He's been acquitted. So, this is your Islamic state, this is your Islamic government, this is your Islamization. Sure, we have the trappings. You have the mosques being built, you have the madrasas being financed, but the substance of Islam is not there, and the majority will not know any the wiser because they are not allowed to know what Islam is. And you keep the masses in ignorance, save that which you will have them know, and you control them. So yes, of course, from time to time, since the 70s and since the 80s, Datuk Sri Anwar was a key element in that Islamization process. He may have forgotten, I haven't.
The interest of time, bringing it back, a lot of questions coming up now. I had a first question from the front here. We'll take this one first.
I suppose I have a two-part question. One is, if I remember correctly, a few years ago, you were encouraging people to sign petitions to appeal directly to the heads of the political classes. So could you speak a little more about your vision of appealing to the rulers in that way? And I suppose related to that, if the 40% occupy Putrajaya, the possibility of invoking Article 150 of the Constitution is quite strong, and that would require your assent, would it not?
Yes.
So how do those two things relate in your thinking?
Okay. Sorry? This one is short. Okay, all right. Listening. I've just been told I'm too long-winded. You're not the first. Petitions, I had several. I launched several petitions. I think two to His Majesty. The second one, I think, was in relation to the judiciary, the appointment of Tun Zaki. former UMNO legal man, to the top judicial office. We got about 25,000 signatures, I think, and that was good, considering we required people to disclose their name and IC. Malaysians generally will be running away from something like that, but we got 25,000. I've not done any since because I've given up appealing to my king. Because that appeal has again and again fallen on deaf ears. So he has a constitutional role to play. He has not, in my view, respectfully fulfilled that role. I will not raise false hopes amongst the population. Article 150, he would have to sign the necessary instrument to allow emergency powers to be invoked. I will only say this, that a thinking king who looked out of his window and saw the mess out there, if he wanted to see the continuance of that institution, would decline to sign. But I did say a thinking king. So I suppose it is pointless speculating. If it should come to pass that we have those numbers out there, it remains to be seen whether His Majesty will align with his partners in governance. And I think this is something that needs to be understood. If you think of our national anthem, Negaraku, tanah tumpahnya darahku, rakyat hidup, satu dan maju. We are mentioned before the monarch. It is because he governs by our will. He rules by our will. The history of man will tell us that. If he doesn't toe the line, he may spell the end of a system that exists. But whether that should come to pass lies in the hands of the people.
I'll take a question from that end.
Hi, I have a question. Well, you mentioned that you don't really care how UMNO gets ousted, whether it's by altruistic means or whether just to maintain our own personal status quo. What's holding the people together then after UMNO is actually ousted? What's stopping them from, I don't know, whatever they do, and how will they continue to maintain their altruistic motives or their status quo after that happens? Do you have any plans for that?
Okay, I think again, the fault must be with me because it appears I've been misunderstood. I didn't say I didn't care how UMNO was ousted, be it altruistic or for reasons of self-preservation. What I said was I didn't care what motivated the middle class to respond to the situation we have at hand. Whether it's because they look at the plight of the marginalized and say this must stop, or they say if we don't do something, our lifestyle is going to be affected. That's what I meant.
Right, sorry, so following on from that, right, what are your plans for the middle class then, if that happens and UMNO is actually...
I have to confess I have absolutely no plans for the middle class. My focus is on the 40% disenfranchised. The middle class are quite okay right now on their own.
Yes, actually, yeah, I agree with that as well, but also the middle class are also one of the bigger, I suppose, community, if you will. They're the bigger, that's the bulk of the people right there, as opposed to, the rich and the poor. So what are your plans for keeping, well, in a way, the middle class happy?
I guess the question, to keep it very pointed, is what's Abu's strategy
Yeah.
with the middle class?
Well, our strategy with the middle class is basically to wake them up to this. That if you don't get up and do something, the numbers are growing, your lifestyle is going to change. You have this comfort of weekends taking your children to secret recipe in Antop Mall. Are you waiting for the time when before your very eyes a bomb goes off and your daughter's arm is ripped off? Because if you think it only happens in the Gaza Strip, wake up. It's waiting to happen. So do yourselves a favor. Now, honestly, I'm being blunt. I'm not here to serve the middle class. They don't need service. They need to wake up. And I was saying this to someone earlier. The CEO earns enough to keep him going for 30 generations, whilst his workforce struggle to pay the monthly house installments. Now, Who facilitates this? The executives who sit in the office, middle class, earning their middle class incomes, driving their middle class cars back to their middle class homes, and making sure that the workforce, viewed as a factor of production, is kept down. So middle class is privy to this dominion by that cream. So I'm not going to go out on a limb for the middle class. I'm sorry.
Can I just like clarify a question? I think
Yeah, I think
actually
it was meant like
Sure.
after that happens. Yeah, sorry.
like, I mean, okay, basically you're saying that the opposition does not have a clear message of what they are selling compared to the UMNO anyway. So if they don't have a clear message and everyone was for the opposition, what makes us think that things are going to change after UMNO is voted out? What's holding us together if they don't sell a clear message? Is that what you're saying? So,
Well,
not really, but-
sorry, this is getting a bit jumbled. What's gonna happen after UMNO is actually ousted? Say we actually, say for some miraculous reason, right? BN and UMNO are no longer in the picture. Now, in a way, ABU has fulfilled its role.
Okay.
What after that?
Okay, let's assume we are seeing a scenario where it's Pakatan plus, because I maintain Pakatan by itself cannot bring UMNO BN down. So you're talking about maybe Pakatan plus some of the parties in Sabah and some of the parties in Sarawak that form the coalition government. Last election, Pakatan made this election pledge that they would deliver reforms in 100 days. Throughout my campaign trail, my contention was 100 days is unrealistic. We'll give them 200 days. But if they do not deliver, they would see us on the streets. I don't know if that partially answers your question.
Sorry, that actually brings up another. I'm sorry if I'm taking a bit longer, but that's a little bit. I find it a little bit more contradictory because you mentioned that you kind of lost faith in politicians in that sense, and so I would imagine ABU to have a strategy. You know, like you said, a strategy to continue after UMNO has actually been ousted.
Well,
On their own, perhaps, or maybe with
we do have a strategy.
NGOs or
We do have a strategy, but I've said this again and again. We're not going to put our strategy up in neon lights for UMNO and BN to, have the full flush of what we're planning. But I think in essence is this. Nobody's going to be in a position to give you a gilt-edged guarantee that the new regime can deliver. But what is important is this. If you've done a David and Goliath with UMNO BN, it gives a tremendous boost to the confidence of the people. So that when they tell Pakatan, if you do not behave and if you do not deliver, you will see us on the streets to bring you down. Okay, in short, and I've said this to Pakatan and again, we give you our vote by default. Not because we love you, but because we so despise how UMNO BN has robbed us blind. You have not done enough yet enough to endear yourselves to us. Okay, so I would be lying to you if we said, oh, we guarantee you that. No, what we do guarantee is this. Post regime change, we continue to be the Rakyat's watchdog. We will not accept any office of gain. We will continue to play the role of watchdogs. And if there's a need to blow the whistle, we blow the whistle.
We'll take a question from here. Yep, done.
Haris, my name is Danish. I got two questions for you. First, what is the relation of ABU with other NGO groups such as Bersih Tindak Malaysia and other powers? And secondly, how can we in Australia support you?
Good. Very good question.
ABU works very well with Tindak Malaysia. We have a good I have a good working relationship with my ex-colleagues on Bersih. I was on the steering committee. And in the same way, we continue to work with any NGO that shares the same aspiration. We post-13GE increasingly realize that there is this need to build a huge coalition of NGOs. Easier said than done, but efforts are underway. But there is a high level of cooperation. How can the Malaysians in Australia help? I love that question.
Come and see me. We're recruiting.
There you are. You know, don't underestimate your power. Don't underestimate your power. I take again the example of the state-sponsored polarization. Now, if, say for instance, if Bersih, Global Bersih, with 81 cities in the network, could wake up to this, that UMNO PN is not going to give us the reforms. You're not going to give us the electoral reforms. But guess what? We've got this network in place. Can we not watchdog what happens in Malaysia from outside? Now take, for instance, Mahathir's statements sometimes, which, whilst I'm dead set against the death penalty, I would sometimes think making an exception with this man. You know? No, really, it's evil sometimes, the things that he says. But when he starts to play on race, when he starts to play on religion, and if there is this concern that they are building us up to another contrived May 13, 81 cities of Malaysians could take memorandums to the High Commission, Malaysian High Commission, and get the media to accompany you. Take that same memorandum to your member of parliament and say, why is this government keeping silent in the face of this potential atrocity? And you spotlight this internationally. It will help us. Okay, PCA, Prevention of Crime Act, they've amended it to bring in the powers under the ISA through the back door. Okay, and I hear whispers, you activists are going to be the first. Why? It's easier to deal with the activists first rather than the political leaders. Don't sit still. Okay? They took away the ISA and now they've brought it back. It's a draconian legislation. Okay, I was appalled that Barack Obama was contemplating coming to Malaysia and anointing Najib's administration. A 47% popular vote, and you form the government, and US is supposed to be the bastion of democracy, and you're there. We should have been up in arms. We have not heard from the 81 cities saying, why is Malaysia governed by a regime that does not have the majority of the popular vote? And my concern is Bersih dwelling too much on the electoral reforms. Wake up to this. UMNO's not going to give it to us. So you can play the role of the watchdog out there. And in this regard, I avail Abu in keeping a close communication channel. So you know what's going on, you know what are the concerns on the ground, and we can share with you where we think you can help us. Now, that's one. Number two, and I will shamelessly tell you this, a media war is expensive. It is expensive. If we are to take a sustained message to the people on a daily basis, it's going to cost. The last round, Abu was able to raise about 1 million. I think slightly more than 1 million. And my colleagues in Abu say the reason we have over 500,000 left is because Haris is a tight-fisted kid. Yeah, well, it's public money, but we've had the accounts audited and we've shared the details with you all. We need funding. We need funding. How we get that across may be something that needs to be worked out. For the last round, running into GE, I dedicated my personal account, and it's an account that was only used for Abu funds. We were amazed that they never froze the account. We were really amazed. We thought it would happen any time. But guess what? Bank officers also are very sympathetic. Okay? So I'll just mention these two things offhand. One, be the watchdogs from outside. Blow the whistle when things need to be alerted. And help us with funding.
I had a question.
Funding solution.
I'm all ears. That's okay.
Harris Ibrahim, I mean, we have followed your pronouncements and your statements from abroad. Many of us here have, and very inspired by the course of action that you have taken. You know, it's a great personal sacrifice. Yeah, that's just an introduction. My question is that it's based on the assumption that regardless of the problems with trying to win an election in Malaysia, regardless of the obstacles and almost impossibility of overthrowing the government through the electoral process, that we should still engage in that process, because it's important for us to be involved, and that's how we also become politicized and how we learn about how government works. But the real question is that in the midst of all this debate last year and this year, there was a constant question about what does partisan mean. My view of partisan was that we should choose that we can support Pakatan now and oppose them tomorrow, or we can choose to even one day support UMNO into the future. You never know with your life. But that doesn't make us partisan. Partisan is only when we are fixed or completely aligned with a political party. If we're not aligned with a political party, we have the choice of supporting any party given the conditions that these parties support electoral reform. So if Pakatan will support electoral reform, then we can support that.
Is that a question?
Well, is that how you interpret partisan,
Well, I'll be very honest. This are you partisan, non-partisan, back and forth at home became so tiresome.
Yeah.
I said, look, I don't care how you label me. I've always candidly said I'm pro-rakyat. Now, if that is partisan, then I will say I am partisan, inclined to the people. And if that is partisanship, so I'm partisan. All right? Non-partisan, I can't fit. Is it possible to be non-partisan about anything? Newspapers, you are one over the other. And I think after a while, it bordered on the paranoia. I found this really quite insane. I mean, when the need arose, I whacked Azmin Ali publicly for his stance in or suggestion that the seat in Semenyih required a Malay candidate. Hadn't we had enough of 40 years of race-based politics that now the deputy president of PKR should be taking a similar? We whacked him. Now, we do that because we are pro-rakyat, pro-people, right? Is SABM non-partisan? We are pro-people. We are pro the people. We are pro-change. Abu, I keep telling you, I am partisan. I am pro-people. I've said this before. I was asked, what would it take for me to cross over and work with UMNO? It's very simple. Give us all these reforms. Right? I don't care whether it comes from UMNO or whether it comes from Pakatan. I want the reforms for the 40%. And if you can give us this and not just talk about it, I mean literally give it to us and we begin to see its implementation, I'll cross over and work with you. I don't care. I work for the people. And if that's partisan, I'm partisan.
We had a question from that.
So we have a few questions. So the first one is, okay, I tried to be short. First one is, besides taking to the streets, what is your measure of success, given that the voting system is rigged, the opposition does not sell your message, and from my experience, not many care about your message anyway, or talk to you, so you wouldn't know whether you succeeded or not. Yeah. Second one is, what are you doing about the redelineation exercise in December? And the third one is examples of revolutions that worked in the past, in history, in the world. I mean,
Anything else?
I think the idea is more like the idea is that slow change always works better than fast change.
Okay.
And you seem to be advocating otherwise.
Okay. You want to be brief and to the point and quick, isn't it? This is probably going to be the quickest that I answer. Examples of revolution that have been successful in the recent past, none. Redelineation, our partners, the other NGOs, I will not mention who, are working on it. We specialize now. As to what is the measure of success, I was going to say none, but I will say this. We launched our Abu volunteer program around about December. And I was sharing with Mary today. We were Mary O'Donovan. We were overwhelmed with the numbers of young people who responded. Okay? And the one common thread I saw in each of them was anger. There's anger, there's frustration, but you do not know where to channel the energy. Okay? Now, we had a training and induction program. And to me, it was humbling. It was humbling to see these young come out of their training exercise, pick up Abu literature and say, I am going to deliver this. All right? We turn them from angry young adults into what we call Abu Eagles. Abu Eagles motivated to go to ground to deliver the messages to the people who needed to receive the messages. Now, I then even say that's a success. But for me, personally, that rejuvenated energy each day to come back again and continue this fight. So, success, none. But little moments of magic, there were plenty.
Got a question from the back?
There are several games in Amdo.
Several?
Several games.
Oh yeah.
So far, it's been, if I can use the term, the Godfather, Dr. M, keeping them in check. Is there any possibility of Amdo going down the path of MCA? Because they've had it in the past, like the Manga 46. Can you see that happening?
Well, this is really entering the realm of speculation. I think Dr. M is fast losing his vice grip. And the only explanation I can give is this. Only the good die young, so that's why he's still around. Okay? But many of his contemporaries are falling like flies. All right? And they are replaced by new warlords who do not feel beholden to him because they have never been the recipients of his power of patronage. So as each day goes by, he loses his vice-like grip on power within. Having said that, he's still a warlord of some power, not to be discounted. Whether Mukris did not make it by the old man's grand design, Machiavellian as he is, we cannot say. We cannot say. But certainly I think the next couple of months, if Najib is able to consolidate his position in UMNO, Mahathir might have it difficult. There was much speculation earlier about deals being done for Najib to have a graceful exit. I don't think that's going to happen. But I'm just like you, looking in from the outside and speculating.
We've got a question from the front. So we've got a question from the front. We'll come back to you in a second.
Actually, there's a comment about the question about revolution. What do you mean by a successful revolution? If you are thinking of a transformation towards of a society to like a heaven, of course we will never find such a revolution. But if you look at instances in our region which has overthrown dictatorships, yes, there are examples. Marcos was overthrown by people in the street. So were the military generals in Thailand. What happened to Suharto? Suharto was overthrown by the people in the street as well. So we need to have I mean, of course, we would prefer not to have to go to the street. We prefer to go and vote in an election and overthrow a government. But if we are disallowed from actually participating in the electoral process that keeps us out of the electoral process time and again, well, people will be looking for other methods and other solutions. And not because they want to, but because they are forced to.
Can I add to that comment? The key difference in my view between that situation that happened in all those countries that you just mentioned and us is we are not down in the gutter just yet.
Yeah, that's right.
The middle class is still able to survive
Yeah.
and sustain their lifestyle, which is what I think comes back to Haris's point.
But it's about successful revolutions. There are many.
If I can just add to that, if you've reached that critical point, when, as I said, the pacifists won't be pushed anymore, you're not thinking of success rates. Those are not the factors that predominate or preoccupy the mind.
Anger.
And if success was the only thing that would motivate me, I would have migrated to Australia a long time ago. All right. So sometimes that cannot be the only motivating force. It's you see a wrong that needs to be righted, and you just got to keep it.
I think my success, I actually didn't mean a successful revolution. I just meant that you want to transform mindsets of the Malaysians. My question is, how are you going to assess the efficiency of your campaign?
Okay.
And reassess strategies?
I like the question because I want to make this distinction. I was with SABM at its inception. I took a leave of absence to go to MCLM and then into ABM. Understand that SABM's effort is a long haul. You want to change mindsets. 40 years of race-based politics entrenched cannot be changed in one generation. But we also sense that if we had this short spurt of energy and if we could take Putrajaya, the first port of call had to be a complete overhaul of the education syllabus and the education system. That's your starting point. It's a long haul. So the long haul is the business of SABM. I'm just a Gurkha now working with others to try to bring down the giant. It's to facilitate that long haul process.
We had a question in the back.
Last question, Haris. In the light of the recent development with the religious persecution issue, how do you see the role of ABU? Would ABU actually take an active role together with some other NGOs like Amiga or other organizations to rebut or to protest against the move by UMNO to continue to tighten the screws on Christians by disallowing them to use the word Allah? And I think this could be I could be wrong. So I'd like your share this opinion, whether you can share with the audience. Is this the beginning of how UMNO is going to control beyond the rural Malays into the other racial groups in the country? It is a very scary proposition what they're doing. And it has been said in the mainstream media last week that some of the other factions within UMNO has said to the Christians or the Chinese, the nones, migrate. What's ABU going to do about it? I think you should let us know because we are very concerned about this move by UMNO. I think it's a bit dangerous. They are setting a very dangerous precedent.
Now, UMNO is only successful with that because they have Putusan and the TV stations. So, once we know the mischief that UMNO is up to, you've got to see where the real damage is done, and that's by the mainstream media. Okay, so now ABU's role is to take that media war into the heartland, even on this issue, because this is an issue that UMNO will use to control the Malay psyche, the Muslim psyche. So yes, we need to tackle this issue, but it is through the media war that we need to take into the heartlands. As to how you tackle it, that's not something I decide. We have a media team that first And then the market research company that has its finger on the pulse of the pakcik in the kampung. Because you need to know the message that's going to break the UMNO that's right, the trust of that message. It's pointless to just do a knee-jerk, go in and hope for the best. No. All right, so yes, but it is with a view to neutralizing the intent. And that intent is this, to get the Malays alarmed, the Muslims alarmed that Islam is under siege. Now, we need to dismantle that. All right, and you need the Malays to understand what's being done. Okay, so yes, that is part of our function, that is part of our role, but the message that we take out there will have to be crafted, taking on board an understanding of Malay sentiment in the kampung and what needs to be dismantled. Now, you remember the cowhead protest in Shah Alam?
Yes.
I think it was 2009. And I thought the Hindus, my Hindu brothers and sisters, responded with what was needed, elegant silence. They didn't play into UMNO's hands. They didn't play. I'm not saying, therefore, that the Christians and the Catholics should just keep a stony silence or do the Christian turn the right cheek. No. But your response must be measured, and we need to understand where UMNO is going with this. And this is why I said just now, we are monitoring whether they are laying the ground. Should the economy bottom out, to blame the Chinese as they, like the proverbial rats abandoning a sinking ship, get the hell out of Malaysia? We don't know. We don't know. I think my personal view, I saw Bishop Paul Tan's response, and he's a wonderful man. I think the responses up to now have been excellent. But what we need to see are the progressive Muslim scholars speak up and give us the ammunition, us, because we will take the media message into the heartlands. Haris speaking up and giving his 2 cents on that is not going to cut anything with anyone in the heartland, all right? But the Muslim scholars, the progressive Muslim scholars need to speak up, need to condemn the judgment of the Court of Appeal, need to condemn the Home Minister for even having taken this position in the first instance, or to condemn the government for continuing. They should have accepted the decision of the High Court and got on with lives. But I think at this stage, we need to first of all understand where they're going with it before we start to react. But are we going to deal with it? Yes, we will deal with it through our media assaults after we had a clearer picture, perhaps a clearer understanding of where they are going with it.
Okay, thank you. I think we are being given signals by the facilities that to wind up. So again, on behalf of, actually I didn't really introduce myself, but my name is Praveen. I'm part of this group called Sayana Bangsa in Malaysia in Melbourne.
Good.
So on behalf of Sayana Bangsa Malaysia in Melbourne, I'd like to thank Haris for taking some time off his personal visit to come and share his experiences and thoughts with us.